Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dark Pixel Podcast. Today we're going to be doing a whole lot of just answering viewer suggested topics.
Yeah, this will be more of like a Q&A kind of.
Yeah, I guess that's true. The reason is because Nintendo refuses to announce the NX. They just won't do it.
Nope.
They keep tweeting like, "No, guys, we're not doing this."
Not yet.
Who said we were making an NX? Who said that? Who said that about
Give
us?
us his name and number.
Yeah, give us.
So, anyways, my name's Mike,
I'm Landon.
And I'm Kaysen.
and we're gonna talk about lots of diverse topics you guys came up with. Matt was asking us, Matt, we got to know your last name because there's so many Matts around.
Yeah.
But what do you because this is the Matt with no last name. Matt, what do you think of post-game gameplay? For example, after you save the world in the game, you continue either before the final boss fight or sometimes after. Should a game just end after the story wraps, or should an epilogue exist? Seed Barrett, music in games that bugged you? That's kind of hard. I'll have to think about that.
Dude, I know one.
Tadpole Superhero wants to talk about Zelda. Just please talk about Zelda.
Please talk about Zelda.
Basically, anything you want to talk about referring to Zelda. This was seconded by somebody else. Somebody was like, yes, do this. I think that they're mostly talking about, like, it's a very broad thing. We're going to have to narrow it down, but, like,
we'll
what
ramble
makes
on
the
Zelda.
series great and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Tank controls like in Resident Evil. Should they still be in games or not? As Jarvis Mott.
Static camera as well.
Oh yeah, static camera. Favorite side quests and RPGs from Mr. Ultimate. And Human Easter one. What do you guys think of the policy of DLC, expansion pass, season pass, microtransactions, and AAA games? Are they out of control now? Okay.
All right.
Post gameplay. Kaysen actually has
Yes.
an opinion on this.
I do. I have always, ever since the first game I ever beat. Okay, maybe that's not true. If it was like Pac-Man.
What was
or
the first
Tetris.
game you beat?
Gosh, I made a statement that I can't.
We
back
sure as
up.
crap never beat the first Mario on the NES.
No, we
Without
had our
the Game
babysitter came out and
The Game
like
Genie
beat it
helped.
for us when we were 5.
Turn on moon gravity and just like float across
There
all
you
the
go.
levels.
So Zelda Ocarina of Time is probably the first game that I can remember thinking about this on. After we beat that game, I was like sick. I'm stoked to go back and like see the world in its beaten form now that everything's better, everything's cool. There's kind of a weird problem there, I guess, in the fact that Zelda kind of sends you back to child times. So
Right.
in a sense, you can kind of do that, but nothing's different. I wanted to see Zelda, like, I wanted to see Hyrule Castle and Kakariko and everything else being, like, rebuilt, and everyone's talking about how awesome we are. Like, you beat Ganondorf.
Yeah.
Good job. And I recognize that's a little weird at this point. It's definitely anticlimactic. It's definitely the kind of thing where if a game developer is going to spend time doing something beyond the scope of the story, that it can be seen as a waste of time. But I really appreciate games that let you go throughout the world in its beaten form. There's a few games that have done it now, and I don't know, I feel like games should do it. I always hated it. I always wait till the credits are over, and sometimes they'll ask you, do you want to save your game as it's been beaten? But a lot of games, especially when I was growing up, you don't get to save. You don't get a save.
Back to the
and
start
so
screen.
I would wait until, like, I don't know, an hour after the credits. I would not turn off my console because I'm like, I want to save the game as after I beat it, and they don't let you do that.
I remember thinking that same thing after beating Ocarina of Time the first time, being like, okay, this is going to be so sick. I've saved the world. Because the world as Adult Link sucks. It's pretty
It
jacked
does. It's
and
messed
stuff.
up.
You want to see Hyrule Castle
Yeah.
Town, vibrant and lively again.
Get
And
everyone back in.
Yeah, and I don't know why I thought that was maybe possibly going to happen. And I don't know why I thought
See,
that
I
it was
don't
like,
either.
okay, yeah, so I'm going to do this and I'm getting this, like, to me that was going to be like a reward of
Totally,
some sort.
totally.
And it didn't happen. And that was the first time I remember as well being frustrated by that, being like, gosh, dang it, I just want to hang out in this world
I know.
and just screw around with it. Because after you beat the game, you could go fight again and again, I guess, if you want to.
Right, your save file is kind
all
of
that's
useless
left to do
now.
is collect the Skulltulas heart pieces, whatever else
Right.
you didn't have. It's a lot of messing around anyways. So, yeah, I think that's my first memory as well, of just wishing that was in the game. I understand why they don't.
To turn off the console without saving. Like, that just, I
Yeah,
could never
it's
bring
painful.
myself to do it.
And then it's like, it never happened.
I know, it's as if you never beat it. Who's going to believe that you
well,
did
it's like
that?
the whole principle of peaking out. They say, like, you want to end on a high note, right?
Right.
You want to end on that big bang and just...
Mm-hmm.
It's like fireworks shows that have, like, a grand finale-ish thing and then keep doing some things and, oh, are they done? I'm not sure. And it's
Right.
like, what was that?
That's true. You do the grand finale and then you launch a few, like, sparklers and it's
A
like,
few extra... Yeah.
what are they doing? I know that after seeing Return of the King in theaters, being a super nerd of the books, I was disappointed that they didn't show the very end Hobbiton thing that's in the books that's not in the movies. Learning more about storytelling and about movies and about other things, it actually makes total sense. It's pretty anticlimactic the way the Lord of the Rings books end as opposed to the way that the movies end. I think the movies end just fine now. But it's kind of that similar kind of thing where, you know, after the rings, spoiler alert, 15 years later, the ring is destroyed, and you see their journey going all the way back, and Gandalf like goes to talk with Tom Bombadil for some reason, and then Frodo and Sam and everyone go back to Hobbiton and stuff. It's like, I don't know, I really enjoyed it, you know, because I just want to be in the world. Like, I really enjoy being a part of a world, not necessarily being a part of a story. Like, stories are cool, I love the story, but when I get drawn into a world, I want to just be a part of that world more so than I want to find out what the writers had in store for the end of their storyline and then it's over. I don't like it when games end. That's always the trouble for me. I think I mentioned this on a podcast once before. I beat Skyward Sword all the way up until the very last boss. And I didn't actually want the story to end. I didn't want the game to end. And so I just lost the will to continue playing. And
You just left it at that.
It took me years. I beat that game, I think, a year ago, finally. But I didn't want to beat the game anymore. I was like, I'm as far as I'm concerned, the game is over, and the world has given me all it has to offer me.
Yeah.
And that was that.
The only thing, there's two games I can think of that do this. And the first is The Witcher 3, where the game ends and you can just continue playing.
Is anything different, or is it?
I mean, the world, like all the story quests are done.
Right.
Like everything's resolved there. Like any side quests you haven't done, you can go do. But if those are done,
That's
you just run around and do whatever.
Yeah.
So like that exists. I'd never ever spent a second doing that. As soon as it was over, I just started the game over again. But
See, I never was one to start a game over again. I just never did that.
the other one, and this is some spoilers here, so skip ahead about 30 seconds to a minute, but in Red Dead Redemption, when the game ends, you can continue playing as John Marston's son. And you can kind of just roam, go do stuff.
That's
so.
Cool.
Those are two examples I can think of, but I think that those work really well in that sort of like open world kind of game where a lot of loose ends are probably left during your playthrough. Like you just go away from that for a while and forget about it, and then you can, there's still stuff to do when it's over for a lot of those kinds of games. But
I know that, like for Skyrim, for example, whenever I talk to people about Skyrim, people usually don't say, "Oh, I beat the game," or "Did you beat?" They say, "I beat the main storyline."
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, I beat the main quest series," or whatever. But to say, like, "Did you beat the game?" it doesn't really work as well in an open world game, like you're saying, because it's like, I mean, Red Dead Redemption obviously is a little more leading, and probably Witcher 3, but specifically with Skyrim, you can kind of go around and do whatever you want and not really do the main quest if you don't want to. And once you do the main quest, you still have all these other things to do too.
So I actually, best example I can think of this is Dragon Quest IX. Dragon Quest IX, you can beat the game, but you're not even, if you wanted to complete everything, I don't know, you're not even like not even halfway there, I guess. Like, I think it took me somewhere around 100 hours to beat the game, the story of the game, and then I put probably 200 more hours into that game, doing all the dungeons where the bosses are harder, and trying to get all the equipment for this job and all the equipment for this class and everything. Granted, I wasn't like super actively, like I would play that while I was doing something else sometimes, like watching a movie and just like freaking crying to beat this boss or whatever. So it wasn't like I was super invested like with my attention, but and I think that's fine, because as long as it doesn't take so much more effort on the part of the developer to add that kind of stuff,
exactly,
if it's not detracting from their time and focus and resources on the actual like main story of the game, basically. If it's something they're like, here you go, if you want to run the RPG treadmill and just level up, and fight a harder dude, and level up and fight a harder dude, then you could do that.
Yeah.
You know what I always thought was funny? Mario RPG sort of does this. Final Fantasy VII does this. But when there are bosses or enemies in the game that are harder than the final boss.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, you beat the game, good job, but did you beat like Diamond Weapon, or like did you like in Super Mario RPG? There's the dojo, and there's the dude, the little mini guy,
the really tiny.
What's
dude.
his name? I can't remember, but it's in Monstro Town. I swear that guy is harder than the final boss, than Smithy in Mario RPG. And games that do that, it's almost like encouraging you to, okay, you beat the game, but
that
you didn't beat this boss, which is, for some weird reason, even stronger than the main boss.
There's a couple of things
funny.
kind of like that in games that kept me coming back to them over and over again. Like Emerald and Ruby Weapon from Final Fantasy VII. I didn't beat those for a decade after I had originally played the game.
Yeah.
But Harvest Moon 64 is another one I always come back to because I can't get that stupid party picture at the end of the game.
Oh my gosh, I know.
There's a part of me that is super frustrated about that every time, because you put so much time into it and you try so hard.
It's like
but there's another part of me that's like, if I don't get this, then I'll have a reason to come back again, and I always have that reason to play the game again and to try something different and some, So Harvest Moon 64 is always a fresh experience, even though I've played it like 6 or 7 times, or at least played it as in I've done the first 3 years of the game.
Right.
But that's another example where you can just continue going if you want.
And the game does fizzle out. I mean, it really does eventually stop being so interesting.
Yeah.
And it's very anticlimactic, because the only reason you have to stop playing the game now is because you're bored as fish.
Yeah.
You're
I was always sad that
the
the house upgrades, there were 3.
Yeah, there weren't very many.
Not a
the
lot.
Kitchen, you got the deck.
Yeah,
the
and
terrace.
that was something I would have loved to have made a freaking huge house.
That would be
would've
cool,
been
yeah.
sweet.
That would be sweet.
In Stardew Valley, the 1.1 update for Stardew Valley, which should be coming out, I think, in October. He's adding a ton more like late game stuff like that, really, really expensive buildings and upgrades and stuff like that.
Nice.
Yeah, so
let's give people somewhere to put their
because
money.
that game is a 3-year cycle as well.
So
should games do it?
Hopefully
they want to.
I think
but there's good reason not to.
Just have the choice.
And yeah, totally. In a game that's like fully voice acted, I could see it being kind of difficult to But if it's like a text game where you can just put your characters back where they were and just write some new dialogue, and that's really not that difficult, but it depends on how far you want to take it, I guess.
And this actually ties in a little bit with, I guess, our last topic. Maybe we can wait to talk more about that at that point in time. But that is where DLC has a legitimate purpose.
Oh, definitely.
That's true.
And it can reward the developer as well for like people just wanted more of this experience.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like as long as it's not DLC that in-game DLC, stuff that you beat the game and then you can activate. I think that can cover this as well.
That's cool.
All right. Seed Barrett wants to know about music in games that bugs us.
So for me,
badly implemented.
So Persona 4 has it feels like they have 5 songs in the whole game. And it's an extrally long game.
That's like a Korean drama almost.
I know, or like an anime, right? Like an anime. And I love Full Metal Alchemist, but
It has the same problem.
yeah, it has the same problem. There's just a
A lot
couple
of TV
songs,
shows do.
and they
You've got the
just
sad song.
they just
You've
recycle.
got the scary song. You've got the
Exactly.
funny song.
The like we're just hanging out, having a fun song. Da 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 dun 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 da da. Like that's the worst part of that game to me. I think they need more music for a long game, especially. You need. More
Oh, yeah.
The longer the
that's
game
100
is, the
hours.
more apparent it becomes when they reuse music, and that's actually one of my biggest problems with Xenogears right now. And I love Yasunori Mitsuda. I love his music. I love the music in Xenogears. It's excellent. It's reused way too much because the game is way too long. And there are going to be people who will hate on me for saying so.
Well,
but
I said the same thing in my Mario RPG review about Yoko Shimomura's score, and she's
Yeah.
obviously a phenomenal musician.
Yeah.
But the battles over and over, the repetition. I mean,
it's
wears
repetition.
You down after a while.
It's repetition.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Totally.
And I was thinking about
RPGs
this
have
question a little
problem
bit.
with this.
And I have negative associations with these games, so they might not be totally legitimate. But Yoshi's Story is a game I hate its soundtrack. Lode Runner 3D on the 64 is a game where I hate its soundtrack.
Oh my gosh.
And the reason is because of how unbelievably repetitive it was, at least for me, because these were games my little brother had, and he couldn't beat them, but he wanted to see the end, so he would make me play them for him. And so I had this association where it's like I didn't want to be doing this, but I was doing it for him so he could, get the value out of his game. And I played the games a lot that I didn't want to play, and the music but in Yoshi's Story, it just like, it's a grating the soundtrack to me. It's just oh my gosh, I hate it. I was just listening to it before the podcast, and it just like my jaw like tightened immediately. It's like, I hate this game so much. And it's not because it's a bad game. I was watching somebody else do a short review of Lode Runner and talk about how much they loved it, and I was blown away because my only memory is how bad that game is, and it's probably not even bad. Again, it's probably just I didn't want to be playing it, but I was. And so the repetition, though, I think is the main point. When you hear the same thing over and over again, it loses its impact for what it was used for originally. Like Xenogears has like the same danger music that they use just over and over and over and over and over.
So regardless of level of danger, it's just
the same
here's
song.
The general danger.
And they'll use it in really weird moments. And I understand again that Xenogears had lots of budget issues. So budget cuts, people taken off the team to work on Final Fantasy VIII, all kinds of things that limited it in that way. It's not its fault that these problems exist.
But a game is what it is.
But it is what it is. And Xenogears has problems with the implementation of music, where there are big reveals for Billy, let's say, as a character. Like, he realizes that what he's a part of is not what he thought. And you're hearing this generic danger music that we've been hearing the whole game over and over again. There's not like a unique piece of music composed for that moment. That is where music starts to really hurt the experience, in my opinion.
I would say a lot of the blame for that would fall on the producers and the directors, because with a lot of the musicians who are typically, often they're part of the studio, but many of them are also kind of contracted out a little bit, and the producers or the director will give them a list and say, hey, compose 2 overworld themes, compose 3 battle themes, compose 4 town songs, and that's kind of that. But the director or the producer should have said, okay, we need more than just 3 battle songs. Okay, we need more than just this. So, that's not completely on the composer's fault.
No, it's totally not.
Yeah, and I know you're not saying that,
Yeah.
but just to give a little insight into why that might be. A great composer just isn't given money or direction enough to have written more songs. He did what they told him to do.
And again, the music that is there is awesome.
Yeah.
It's super good. It's just, there's like, I think 40-something tracks total on Xenogears' soundtrack, in comparison to something like Final Fantasy VII, which has like 90-something tracks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like half the length of most RPGs, and the game's longer than any of the other ones I can think of from around that time from Square. It's a longer game, and it has half the amount of music. That's crazy,
I think even with Final Fantasy VII, though, that and most RPGs do struggle with this, the battle music, the repetitious music in almost any RPG, specifically turn-based RPGs.
Yeah.
It, as good as it can be, it wears you down after a while. And I think that's just a typical problem with RPGs that they kind of just have to deal with, because that's how it is. You can't compose a new song for every battle, and it's grinding. And some RPGs are worse than others, but I think that's a general problem with RPGs, despite the fact that RPGs probably usually have the best music of any game genre.
Yeah.
But it's just the repetition's difficult.
I think it's interesting contrasting all that with like how film scores are done, because obviously movies are shorter than games, so you're not going to have as much of a problem with repetition. But what will often happen with somebody like John Williams is he'll write a couple of themes, kick it out to an assistant who's actually doing the orchestration.
Right.
But what happens is those themes aren't just used straight out and like as is. They're woven into songs and out of songs to time out with things. And so you've got a theme like in Lord of the Rings with Howard Shore. You might hear quite frequently the Fellowship theme, but then it's to a point where you hear it, but you just hear part of it, or it just kicks in a little bit as the Fellowship breaks apart or whatever.
That's right. You hear it in a minor key, and you're like, oh, something's not right.
And it wasn't like he wrote one song, and then that's great, and we're going to use it like several times throughout the film. It's like he wrote one theme, and it's going to be woven in several times throughout the movie. Not exactly as is. In video games, there might be a day where we get to have some more like dynamic orchestration technology behind the music and how it can be more contextualized with what you're experiencing. But right now, it's mostly like, here's this song, here's the loop of it.
Yeah.
And if it needs the loop, it can do this. If we just have this timed with this cutscene, it can do this.
Right.
And then, so you end up with a lot of stuff that it's amazing. Like a lot of pop songs these days are like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's
right.
Roughly, yeah.
And but a video game song that's 5 minutes long and loops can sound so much more repetitive. I mean, for loops to work and not sound too grating, I mean, they have to be really, really long.
Yeah.
So it's just a weird challenge that video games have. You know.
And just a real quick correction, because I'm sure someone's going to go look this up. Final Fantasy VII might not have been the soundtrack I was thinking of. That might have more like 60 or 70 tracks. I think I was thinking of Xenoblade Chronicles, which has like over 90. But it's still, a 70-song soundtrack in comparison to like a 45-sound soundtrack for this game being much longer.
So you know something crazy, Joe? I was looking at the Wind Waker soundtrack, and that thing has over 100 tracks.
Oh, it does?
The Wind Waker is freaking huge. Like, the amount of music they had written for that game is ginormous. And when I think of it, I'm like, I don't recall a ton of repetition other than just going around the towns, right? I mean, they did a great job with that game. Something like Harvest Moon, what we were just talking about, when you leave a screen and go to the next screen, it restarts the song again.
That's so
It's
annoying.
a great song, but I don't like that at all.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's
very annoying.
It's a very bad thing to do.
It's
of course, that game probably has about 10 songs in the whole game.
Some songs suffer from poor instrumentation choice as well. Sometimes it's just like it stands out too much in the wrong way.
Yoshi's story for me.
Yeah.
Bad choice of instruments. Grading lead instruments.
Oh, jeez.
Music.
Okay.
Talk about Zelda.
Moving on. Okay,
You know what's funny? Our first 5 podcasts, we talked about Zelda every single time. We haven't talked about it since like E3 now.
That's true.
I guess we do every now and then. We sprinkle in a little bit, but
I've been playing Twilight Princess with my wife. I actually was streaming it on Sunday. We had a few people stop by. And she's been so floored by Zelda. She has been so absolutely floored by Zelda. She beat Wind Waker. She just wants more. She's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, well, it's so cool. There's this new one coming out in the spring. So, we could play this one in preparation for that. She's like, we're playing all of them. She's like, we're playing all of them. Because she feels like they are games that are, I agree. I think they're designed well for entry level as well as advanced players. I think that it's one of the franchises that does a great job of balancing that challenge.
Yeah. Especially with the way they do hero mode and stuff now. Like I almost always play on hero mode at default if I can.
Yeah.
And makes the game a lot more enjoyable for me.
Well, I was streaming on Sunday. I think it was Herky Durkee, stopped by and was like, dude, I forgot there were even hearts in this game, because he played it.
Plays it on hero mode.
And he's like, oh my gosh. And she's
when
looking for hearts in pots and stuff. And he's like, oh my gosh.
Forgot you could do that. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
The new game's not going to have that at all, though, so it's going to be interesting.
It looks very,
But let's see. How should we narrow this discussion? Why don't we all rank our top 10 Zelda games?
Top 10.
Top 10?
I've played about
Yeah,
10.
top 10, dude.
I've played.
I've never thought about that.
I've played
hard.
9 Zelda.
I love Wind Waker. I think I usually go Wind Waker, Majora's Mask for my top, but I think I've said my favorite game is either that one or the other, like in reverse order.
Right.
A bunch of times.
So
let's
people are
talk
gonna
about
look
this.
you
Just
up.
1 and 2.
1 and 2,
They
Wind
flip.
Waker, Majora's Mask. Partly because I appreciate the originality. If there's anything that gets to me, it's people saying that Zelda games are too formulaic. I understand
Right,
the
it's the
dungeon
same
formula
IP.
where the item, and then you can use that item on the boss, and you can use that item to in the second half of the dungeon, retread some areas or whatever. Which I don't think is like bad, but the fact that all of these Zelda games, they are actually so different from each other, engine wise, they're all very similar to Ocarina of Time. With the way the layout and the C buttons and the pausing and everything, and then the way you just automatically jump and your action button, your swords. A lot of your
Breath
sword
of the
moves.
Wild, you got a jump button.
That's true.
Crazy.
That's true. But
First time ever.
dude, I appreciate Wind Waker and Majora's Mask because they're standout original titles compared to any other game franchise. I feel like.
Yeah.
Those are my 1 and 2. It's tough beyond there. Honestly.
Okay, so this might also lead into ranking if we want to do that, but 2D or 3D?
So
Which do you like
nostalgia, I feel more for Link to the Past specifically.
Yeah, that was our first Zelda.
That was the first Zelda game I played, and I
that was
love
so
that
fun.
game. I love talking about music getting repetitive. The music in that game is really repetitive, and it never really bothered me that much. I don't know why.
Interesting.
Maybe because I was a kid and I didn't give a crap. But I love that game.
I always enjoyed in Link to the Past. You got your map, and you can see the overworld, and it wasn't 3D, but it looked 3D. They did a good job with the shading and the leveling and everything.
Yeah.
And we had a sandbox outside, and I would go and try and recreate Link to the Past and all the mountains and the plateaus over here, and then the big, kind of Mount Doom thing over here, and all the towns. And the forests, all the sticks and things. And we'd probably usually put ants in it so that they could populate the world. But I remember doing that. I was so, engrossed. And I would always Agnehem,
However you say the name, yeah.
he would do his attack where he'd, get a big glowy bulb of his head and he'd throw it. And I would, that's, how I played back then. I would mimic that
You'd
game
act
so
like you
much.
were the bad guy in Zelda games.
Because I thought that was sweet. I was like, you're building this power. And then kind of like Dragon Ball Z. But nostalgia for that game is tops for me.
Yeah, that's.
But I do enjoy the 3Ds better. The 3D was more.
Yeah, my first Zelda game was Ocarina of Time, and it's been very interesting. The only 2D Zelda game that I've ever been able to, I've ever felt motivated to go all the way through it was the original Legend of Zelda. I beat the original Legend of Zelda. I've never beaten A Link to the Past. I cannot get myself to play the sequel to it.
Between Worlds?
Yeah, Link Between Worlds. I'll start it, I'll play it for a couple hours one day maybe, and then I just don't care. I don't know what it is. It's really, really hard for me to explain. But there's just almost nothing about the top-down... Well... Because it's not necessarily 2D, the Link
The
Between
3DS
Worlds,
one.
or
Yeah, that
the
was
ones
a
on
little 3D.
DS. Because I beat the 2 ones on DS, but it's the same formula where they're the top-down Zelda
Top-down,
versus the other kind.
Yeah.
But they don't grab me. They really don't. I had my brother had Seasons. No, he had Seasons. I had Ages. I never beat that. What other top-down ones have I played?
Adventure of Link. That one. That's a
Game
whole
Boy?
different one.
I mean, I've dabbled in all of the Zelda games, but the only ones I have sat down and been nothing's gonna stop me from beating this game are the Ocarina of Time Beyond console, home console Zelda games. Those captivated me. They always do, and the top-down ones don't. And I really need to put more thought into why, but they just don't.
I like games like Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Secret of Mana, or even Sega Densetsu 3. That type of game where it's that top-down.
That's the funny part, too,
I love that
Me
game
too.
style. Like
I was so enthralled.
one of
by
my
it
favorite mobile
as
games
a kid.
that I've played is a game called hold on.
Because Seiken Densetsu 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. And Secret of Mana is also wonderful. And it's not the top-down perspective I don't like. I just don't know about what it is with Zelda's top-down games that they don't grab me. I don't know why.
Is
Just
it 'cause
Wayward
the
Souls. Wayward Souls.
inconsistency Where Link switches to his right hand with the sword when he walks right, but it's in his left hand when he walks.
I thought about that when
What?
I played that game. That's true. I don't know.
So Wayward Souls?
Link to the Past is probably one of the games that it's probably the Zelda game I've actually beaten the most. Honestly, because I beat that game a couple of times before Ocarina of Time came out. When Ocarina of Time was coming up, I just couldn't play enough Link to the Past because I was so freaking excited for Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, we played that one a lot.
But yeah, like Ocarina of Time, I've beaten a couple times, but like I don't feel super motivated to beat games more than once normally.
Yeah, me neither.
Like if enough time's gone by that I've forgotten enough about the game, then I will. But I'm
or
much
if you're
more.
with some other people, and
Yeah, I'd much rather like beat a game and then beat it 100%. Basically, like find all the skulls and hearts before I would start the game over again. I don't know why.
Yeah, I've never been one to restart the games either.
But I guess for me, if I were to rank them, I would say Majora's Mask my favorite, and Wind Waker is my second favorite. Next would be Ocarina of Time, followed by probably probably Twilight Princess, then Skyward Sword. Then, let's see. I really enjoyed the one where you played that fetching pan flute. I think that's Spirit Tracks. I liked that game, even though
blow into the DS.
Yeah, even though even though I have problems, like I've said, the top-down Zeldas don't necessarily like grasp me quite the same way. But and I hate that control style, like the stylus. But that game, I remember having like really interesting mechanics, just like really clever mechanics. Same with the Phantom Hourglass too, where you would draw on the map. And there were a couple places where you needed to like copy something from the top screen to the bottom. You'd have to close the DS and then open it, and it would like print it.
I was thinking about that with the Virtual Console on Wii U. Is there a dedicated button to reset?
I wonder.
I've heard there's an option where it's in the pause screen. You pause and then you select close screen. That it's like a thing. They had to do that.
Thinking about that, I was like that.
Or you can hold your
that,
Wii U
novelty.
up to your TV and press it against the television.
But for whatever reason, those two DS games I got through.
See, and I've never been interested in playing those two games myself.
You know,
I've
me
never
neither.
have.
So, like, I will never say, you will never catch me saying
Minish Cap,
that, like, those games are better than A Link to the Past, or that those games are even better than A Link Between Worlds, or any of the other 2D Zelda games, or whatever. They're not. Let's be very clear. They are not better. They have big problems. But I was captivated enough to play them all the way through, so they would probably go Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass next, followed by Link to the Past, which I like the music from a lot. It probably is my favorite Zelda in terms of musical score.
Music's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the music in that game quite a bit. And I like the world, too, like the world kind of construction, like you were talking about. You want to go rebuild it in the sandbox.
Totally.
Like it's really interesting
And how
the
it
way
changes
it's laid
from
out.
the dark world to the light world.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
Then, actually, I'm only placing this behind. I actually really like Zelda 2 a lot, but I haven't beaten it, so that's one reason why it's far back. But I actually really enjoy the mechanics of Zelda 2 a lot. It's like got a lot of RPG mechanics to it, and I thought that was really interesting. And I thought it's actually pretty fun to play. Just, again, never felt motivated to beat it or anything. It is pretty hard, but... followed by the original Legend of Zelda. And that's going to be blasphemous to a lot of people who were there when it came out. I understand it was a landmark title. It changed things. A lot of people feel like this new Zelda excites them because it reminds them of that game.
Right, it's so similar to the first one.
Because it's all about exploration. It's all about just going out there and figuring what's there and talking about it with people and finding the secrets. It sort of built a community of people that talked about the game together. And no hand holding whatsoever. And it just lets you go explore. I get it. I just didn't have that much fun playing it, even though I beat it.
Right.
So yeah.
But you case
That's good.
favorite Zelda.
A favorite would have to be Wind Waker. When I think of other of the games like Skyward Sword or not so much Ocarina of Time, but the problem with Skyward Sword is that after a while you realize that you're never going anywhere but those 3 places on the map in the world below.
And the upside down.
That realization's like frustrating. Because I always like to explore. Whereas in Wind Waker, it's like you can go. You got this whole thing. You're going to fill out every square on this whole map. But Wind Waker is definitely my favorite. I love Majora's Mask, but I don't, I guess, connect with it the way that you guys do. At least not as much, because I wouldn't put it above Ocarina of Time. Although I do, it's like a totally sweet game, totally unique, very cool. But whenever I want to play Zelda, I'd much rather start playing Ocarina of Time than Majora's Mask, because Majora's Mask, there's just a lot to remember and there's a lot to get done, and you have to, the different days. There's a lot to like kind of keep track of. For Ocarina of Time, you just kind of like. So I'd probably put that one next. And Link to the Past is like classic. That game was so cool. That was my childhood. Beyond that, I mean, I don't know.
Who knows, man?
I don't know. But the 3, Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, those games probably impacted me the most, too, growing up.
Nice. I think I love Majora's Mask so much because it has that Alice in Wonderland vibe.
Yeah.
And I've always freaking loved, like, Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland. Like, that's always been so fascinating to me, like, taking people from your actual world, but they're in this bizarro world and kind of a little different and twisted, and Majora's Mask, like, nails that for me, at least.
Yeah, they do a good job there, but it is weird. And its
totally
weirdness
weird.
is part of the reason I'm not as drawn to it, I guess. But that's its charm. I get it. It goes both ways.
It's the perfect counterpoint to people who think all Zeldas are the same.
Oh, totally.
It's the one that's like, no, there's nothing the same about this.
And it really only works as well as it does because of Ocarina of Time. So you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, because they were able to take those characters in and you knew them already. If it was
it's-
just its own thing, it would be tougher.
it would be weird.
Familiar
That's
while
true.
being just like a totally different thing. It's great.
All right, we got like a little less than 20 minutes to get through the rest of these.
Okay.
So-
We could always just pause and come back to
Jarvis.
Oh, okay, sure.
Jarvis Mott. Do tank controls like early Resident Evil and static cameras have any place in modern gaming, or are they a relic of the past? Games you played that are a guilty pleasure, so this is sort of like a 2-parter. Still flawed in many areas, but you still enjoy it. So
Okay.
I don't like tank controls for
I
controlling
hate them.
humans. Doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense.
I
Right,
hate
me
them.
too.
It's like having a gas pedal as a person.
Look, I get
what
it.
Crap.
Look, I get it that people are going to use as a defense that it's meant to supplement the horror. Like you feel like you can't
Sure.
move, but I
Sure.
think that's
But-
it's arbitrary. Like
What it does is it creates more of a barrier between you and the character.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you can get to the point where you maybe feel that one-to-one connection, but I feel like it hinders it unnecessarily.
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't make it scarier because it is scarier. It makes it scarier in a frustrating sort
Well,
of
it makes it
way.
scarier like, here, you've got your hand tied behind your back now. You're probably feeling a little more anxious, aren't you? And it's like, yeah, but
yeah.
Why don't you try and fight this thing while being,
Wasn't it
have your
scary?
legs
You're
cut
gonna
off.
die.
You have to crawl with your hands across the floor to escape this beast running after you. Isn't that more stressful? Like, yes.
Yes, it is. Can't deny that.
You know what I mean? Like it's an arbitrary way to go about increasing, I guess.
And
stress.
unfortunately, it was just because people were trying to figure out what to do with 3D controls at the time.
Yeah.
So, like, to say that it has an effect of making a game scarier, sure, but it was a choice. They thought they were making a good decision on how to create character in 3D space. And it turns out that was a poor decision, and that control scheme is going to pretty much be left by the wayside.
Yeah, and I believe it deserves to be. I hope it never comes back ever again.
However, the next point with static cameras,
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of feel two different ways about it. I feel like some games, I don't want static camera to go by the wayside or be a relic of the past. Because there's so much you can do with the static camera as far as art style goes. when
Yeah.
games in like the 64 and PS1 kind of moved into this new 3D thing, rooms all of a sudden felt a lot more empty. The world, like everything just kind of feels, you don't get to have nearly as much detail because they aren't able to kind of like present it in a way where you can, you know, I don't know, where you can realistically and artistically kind of just like matte paint, so to speak, the whole scene.
No,
and I
totally.
think that's really cool, and I think they don't do it as much in games now, and I think they should.
Yeah, static camera is to some degree the ultimate like film crossover, the ultimate like auteurship, where literally the director knew what you would be seeing and what you would not be seeing and chose where it was and was not, and when it came into view. You know what I mean? That's lost on video games for the most part.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
But it's not for every game.
Not for every game.
For sure.
Games where you exploration is a huge like prominent feature. Don't have static cameras.
Yeah,
please.
don't do that.
Let me look at what I want to look at if I'm exploring an area. But if it's a game that's primarily about story and art and it creating a feeling in the character or in the player, I mean, like
Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 are like that, and just
like it could be used very effectively there, and I think it could definitely come back. I'd like to see it come back a bit.
I remember thinking when 3D TVs were a thing, I was thinking like, oh man, this is going to be great. This is going to make playing FIFA way easier because you know where the ball is when it's up in the air, or all that kind of stuff. And obviously that didn't go anywhere. You guys remember that? You remember when freaking every game was like 3D TV compatible, like the Assassin's Creed games and stuff?
I feel like that was part of Nintendo's reasoning for doing a 3DS, which it's sold fine, I guess. But the whole 3D thing really was just a fad, and it's kind of no one cares about it now.
Which is so funny because wasn't James Cameron all over like high frame rate 3D, and he took so long to make these Avatar movies now that no one gives a fetch about 3D anymore.
Yeah. His Avatar sequel.
All 3 or 4 of them that he has coming up.
20 of them.
Jeez, dude.
But it is funny to see that as a thing that everyone thought was going to be a thing, and I don't know, maybe it still will be one day, but...
Like, wouldn't it be interesting just to see what it would be like if there was a Final Fantasy VII remake for the 3DS that was largely preserved the PlayStation aesthetic. That fixed
cool.
angle,
or like
you
a
would
mod
have the
or
depth in
something,
those
right?
scenes.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting.
That would be very interesting.
You would know where the ladder was, basically.
That was always so difficult.
Where you can walk.
Or the train graveyard was like the worst for me as far as knowing what things can move and what can't, and what you can go behind and where the invisible walls were.
Yeah,
that was hard.
Yeah, that's the trouble with static cameras, is knowing exactly where you can walk and not. But I think
it gives you a super objective viewpoint, which can hurt the storytelling sometimes. When it's like you don't feel like you are the character because you feel very far away from the character.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Especially when it comes to a new angle and your character's way down the corridor.
Yeah.
And you've got to like run all the way down, and you're not
it's
like
surreal kind of.
Totally.
It's like having an out-of-body experience.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's good.
And also control-wise, you're pulling the stick towards you. Usually when you're control characters, you're always telling them where to go, or they're moving away from you. But when you have to go forwards, you're pushing down on the stick for your guy to walk. Anyways. That's like another kind of like almost surreal experience just within gaming of like, I don't know, it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guilty pleasures though.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a bad game that I like.
Tough, I know, right?
Well, I always say the Nancy Drew games because I've played all of them. And so that's definitely guilty pleasure there, where it's like they're so messed up. Those games are so poorly programmed. But they're fun. They're fun
And it's
games.
kind of an underserved genre, right?
Oh, absolutely. The point and click kind of,
yeah.
and that's something. The games in the '90s there were tons of games like that. There's none of that now, and they're still doing it. So that's cool.
Man, that's tough for me to think of. I feel like there's a lot of N64 games that weren't actually very good, but that we really dug because that was like all we had.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean that's true. I loved Rebel Assault 2. Game's terrible. I loved that game, man. I still play it.
Well, Shadows of the Empire.
Shadows of the Empire is a piece of crap.
That's not
Talking
a good
about repetitive
game.
music. Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
Gosh.
Oh, music
so
in that
bad.
game.
But loved it.
We played them and beat them many times.
I
Might wanna
It's kind of stuck on the leg.
Right.
Trying to think of a game that I like that's bad.
Yeah.
Nancy Drew's a great example, but
It is. It's
trying to think of something
fun,
like that.
you know?
What the fetch?
Puzzle Pirates. I played Puzzle Pirates with Krista. She was showing me that she grew up playing like crazy and played it, and it's like they haven't updated the UI in like 15 years. RuneScape too.
RuneScape.
Like, it just met the bare minimum requirements to be an acceptable MMO, especially at the time.
And then I spent hundreds of hours playing that game.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else.
It's all good.
Favorite side quests in RPGs? And Mr. Ultimate wants to know. Oh, fuck.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's. Skyrim Dark Brotherhood is an awesome
Dark
side
Brotherhood.
quest.
I really like the Thieves Guild quest in that game quite a bit. Where you get the Thieves Guild like
the Nightingale armor.
Oh, dude, that's
that's all I wore once I got
the
back.
best armor in any game ever.
It's kind of sad, actually. You're like, you don't care when you get anything else after that. You're like, whatever.
Yeah, it's super good. I generally like when side quests illuminate more about like the characters. Like they're not just like a fun distraction. They also tell you something about your characters and your story. I guess that depends on the kind of game you're playing.
Right.
But
dude, Ocarina of Time, big Goron sword. It's like tedious, but at the same time, it made the world feel slightly more alive because you're getting items that you just normally wouldn't be an item at all in the game.
Right.
You know, like this person needs this, you got to get it to them because they need this now or whatever. Like that was really, really interesting to me. Although super frustrating, so I wouldn't say favorite, but I liked what it did for the world. It made it feel like there was stuff going on. People needed things, needed to meet people. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as side quests go, I mean, I don't know, man.
it's hard to like cycle through.
I know,
There's
because
just
when I think of a
million
game,
them.
I'm thinking of
It's like
the
story.
game. So I'm like, hey, Final Fantasy 7. All right, well, there's the golden
I
saucers.
also I have like a
There's that.
notoriously bad memory. Like it's really funny when I stream games, even games that I'm pretty familiar with. Let's say Chrono Trigger, for example. You know, something I've beat multiple times, and you get people in the comments being like, "What the fetch? You missed this. You missed that. You missed this." It's just like I don't have the memory for all these little details that most people have. And I forget a lot of details very
that's
quickly.
funny because I feel like you have a better memory than I do with a lot of these old games, especially games you haven't played in a long time. I feel like, dude, I was playing Wind Waker again with Krista, and like we were getting towards the end of the game. Like I remember this being awesome, but I couldn't remember how it went specifically. and it played, and it was almost like I was doing it again. Like I didn't remember how the Ganon fight worked in that game. It actually really took me back. I'm like, why didn't I remember that? Like, not the final stage of it, the puppet stage.
I think
the
way that my memory works is if you ask me on the spot, like, how does this go in the game? I would not be able to tell you. But once I arrived in the setting and looked at it, it would spark it.
So that's more like a muscle memory kind of thing.
It'd be like, oh yeah, I remember this now,
Yeah.
and then I could do it, and I would specifically know step by step by step by step. But if you just like pulled me out by random, and be like, hey, where do you find this item in Legend of Zelda? Like, where is that found? It's like, but like you put me in the environment and I walk up to it, I'll know exactly.
Yeah, like if you ever had to explain to a person that you're showing a game, like how to do a certain attack or something, like, oh, you push this button, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you have the control in your hand, you're like, oh yeah, it's this, and that. And you know it.
That reminds me of Gandalf in the Fellowship of the Rings. I have no memory of this place. And then he's like chilling for a while, and then after a while, he's like, oh, it's that one.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah, it doesn't smell so foul down here.
always following your nose.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's hard for me to pull up like all these
quests are
side
hard for me,
quests
yeah.
and like remember which one's my favorite. But just as the best answer I can give are side quests that that tell you something more about characters are generally my favorite, which is the reason why I like Final Fantasy VII so much, is because there's so much of that where you do the side content, but the side content really tells you something about the people you're with.
Less like a fetch quest to keep you busy and more like actually developing story.
So, good example, I hate the chocobo racing. I hate getting the gold chocobo. That tells me nothing about the characters or the world, really. It's just a distraction.
Like 7, then that's
in order for
difficult,
you to get beyond a barrier where you can get the strongest attacks, the best materia.
Which doesn't make sense anyways in the game.
I know, that's so
you could have gotten past.
Right. Yeah. So I hate that kind of side quest. The kind of side quest I like is where you learn about Vincent and Yuffie, and you go to her hometown and you learn about why she's the way she is and her relationship with her father and like all that stuff. That's the kind of side quest I really like. As annoying as it was that she steals all your materia, like, and as much as that makes you hate her, like learning about her is really fun. That's an engaging quest. And this kind of goes into what we're going to talk about here in a minute, but that's what I think expansions on games really do. Mm-hmm. Like I finally started the Heart of Stone expansion in The Witcher 3 last night, and it's blowing me away. It has nothing to do with the main story, but it's better. Like the writing is better. Like it's just like such an unbelievably interesting story that's going on, and it has nothing to do with the main story. But honestly, I feel like it's better. It's like a better story, and that's crazy. Like that's the kind of side quests I like. So.
It's hard for me to pin a specific side quest, but I do like games that have lots of side content, like The Wind Waker, where there's all those different islands. You can go to all of them, and you can explore and find out what's going on. And every single one of them, and it does make this world seem more alive. The more side content you have, the more stuff that's going on in the world aside from the main quest, and that makes the world seem bigger, and that's cool as long as it's like good stuff. And so this would maybe fit more for like an adventure exploration game, where your character is more an extension of you as opposed to the story, and you're trying to find out character development kind of things where you're trying to figure out your character. I'm talking more like games where the character is an extension of you. That way you just kind of do what
Getting
you would
to know
do.
the world.
Do what you would do if you were in the world.
Yeah,
exactly. So Wind Waker, I feel like, with all of its islands, kind of offers that.
Yeah, I would agree. I like that. Unless they made it a little more interesting with some of the way they did treasure maps, or like a guy, the fish would tell you something, you know, like, oh, what the crap, if I come here when the moon's like this, you know.
There's a ghost pirate ship.
Yeah.
Oh,
here's what I tell you,
rewarding.
I do not like. I do not like a side quest where you hide a very powerful ability or weapon or something that I want behind something repetitive and long. Hot and cold in Final Fantasy IX, all that freaking digging in the ground you have to do in a million different spots to find the treasure maps that you have to then, it's an obscure view, you got to go look around the world for it. I don't like that. I don't like chocobo racing in Final Fantasy VII. I don't like anything that requires you to deal with a random number generator in order to give you the thing you're looking for. Don't hide something that I want behind repetitive, boring stuff.
Yeah.
Make it part of a fun story that I can, make it a reward at the end of a story to get through or something like that, We'll come back to this one.
Yeah. We're going to have to come back. We're going to do something unprecedented. We're pausing the podcast.
We'll be right back. Hi, we're back. Okay, last question today from Human Easterwan. What do you guys think the policy on DLC, expansion pass, season pass, microtransactions in AAA games or full-price games these days? Are they out of control now? The answer is yes.
It's strictly a market thing. If people are paying for these things, then there's a market for it, and they're going to keep doing it. That's all it is. If people are buying it, then they're going to keep selling it.
Here's the thing.
It's capitalism.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, that is very true. And, but what they're doing to get people to buy them is tricking them into thinking there's exclusivity.
Right.
Let's take this Final Fantasy 15 like collector's edition, for example. They have like a certain weapon, a skin for your car, like these very minor cosmetic sort of things that they pitch it as if you're only gonna get it if you get this version from, and you got to get it from GameStop.
So those are like pre-order rewards,
right?
Yeah, and sometimes DLC is part of that.
And microtransactions, I think, sort of goes along with this, where they're like, they don't change anything in the game really, other than just a costume or something cosmetic. It doesn't actually really change your experience in any way. But they pitch it as this sort of
I'm actually okay with microtransactions that are purely cosmetic, because it's like, whatever, nobody else is getting less of the game. You know what I mean? If you want to look a certain way and you want to pay to look a certain way, have at it, man.
Some games do that.
I guess
games, like Pokemon Go, you can buy Pokeballs and you can buy other things.
There is here's an example. Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed 3, for sure, I know this. They pitched certain pre-order bonus DLC that were actually side quests. They weren't just cosmetics. Like Final Fantasy 15 is doing cosmetic pre-order bonuses. But Assassin's Creed 3 had a Benedict Arnold side quest
I remember
that was a pre-order bonus from GameStop. Right? And they pitch it to you like, you won't get this if you don't pre-order it from GameStop. But then 6 months later, it becomes available to download for everybody. And that's always the case. They're not going to lock this content out for all the millions of other people who got the game some other way. But, you know, it's a way to incentivize people to spend a little more money on this digital collector's edition or whatever it is from a certain retailer. And it's a way to just get you to spend a little bit more.
That's currently the case with Civilization 6. If you were to pre-order the game right now, you would have I think you could play as the Aztecs right off the bat, something like that. But they tell you in that same thing, they're like, that will be unlocked for everybody a month after game release. Basically.
Okay,
so
you're
not paying more for it. It's just comes with the pre-order.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to get it from this place.
Yeah, it's supposed to incentivize more pre-orders, which pre-ordering is a bad idea.
I know pre-ordering, and
I came very close to pre-ordering Civ 6, and I was like, dude, why? There's no reason.
Why?
I don't care. I will buy it. First off, I am buying Civilization 6, so it's not a question of if I'm going to wait for reviews, because I'm buying that game essentially no matter what. Because a lot of those games come out, they're poorly reviewed, and then they tweak them, and then they get better. But yeah, that kind of stuff. Pre-order things I have a little more of an issue with, but purely because there's so many different kinds of microtransactions. I remember the first time I noticed a AAA title that had microtransactions that we were playing was NCAA football 2008 or 2009, and in your recruitment phase, you could pay $5 or something to get
to basically better recruits.
Yeah, better recruits for your team or whatever.
I was just like, what?
Which would totally be an NCAA violation.
Yes, it would in real life. Oh my!
I remember being like, "What the crap is this? We bought the game, didn't we?" Feeling that betrayal.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I paid for everything, and that's the tricky thing. If people feel like they paid for a whole thing and they're not,
exactly. Did I buy this whole game or did I not? I didn't buy the whole game. I only bought 80% or 90% of the game. There's this other thing they want me to buy more of for the whole game. And that's just not how it used to be. And so that's very frustrating.
Yeah, I guess here's where you draw the line. If the thing is created before launch and they are withholding it from you unless you pay a little more, that's generally going to cause people to feel some frustration. You've developed this as part of the game, and you're creating this extra paywall to access it, even though it's there already. What I think is more acceptable is you release your game, and then you continue afterwards developing more stuff for it, and then you release that. Later on for people to buy. I think that's appreciated. That goes along with what we were talking about earlier, where you beat a game and you want more. An expansion is something that adds more value, lets you play the game more, get more out of it, even after you've beaten it. I'll always point to The Witcher 3 because it just does everything right in every regard. It does nothing wrong. But in this regard, it does it exceptionally well. There's a character you meet at the very beginning of the game. in the first tavern that you go into, the first like pub. And I forgot about this guy. I like totally, completely, 100% forgot about him. I played the game like 3 times beforehand. I always talked to that guy in the pub at the beginning. And it's like, oh, this guy's kind of mysterious at the time. They kind of just like leave it at that, and you never see him again for a 120-hour game. You just never see the guy again. And in this new expansion, well, it's the Heart of Stone expansion, not new. It's new to me because I just started it. The guy comes back and he has a huge role, and it's like, whoa, this character's so sick. I totally forgot about it. And it's so interesting the way they introduce him too, because he's sort of standing far away from the camera, and he's like, hey, remember me? And he starts walking up, and you have a yes and no, and it's just like, no, I don't. And then he walks up, and it's like, yes, you do. Fetching is like, yes, I do. Fetch! You, the guy, Fetch, yeah, like, you were crazy, and I totally forgot about you. Like, that whole expansion is like a perfect example of how to add just amazing value because it's well written, all that stuff, but also they developed it after they had finished the main game, released the game, sold the game.
Took them like a year for each of
those.
those.
They
right?
worked on it. It's a huge expansion. It's like 10, 15 hours more game. And they took elements from the main game that you had forgotten about, reintroduced them in a really cool way. Like, that's the way you go about doing that. That's a perfect example of how you use DLC or expansions to add more value, to make it worth spending more money.
Yeah, I one of the other things I take issue with is Season Pass. Like, I don't know exactly when that got started. I remember the first time I heard about it, I was like, what does that even mean? Right. But that you're volunteering for sometimes unknown amounts of DLC that you're like, sure, whatever you guys come up with, I'll take it.
And if they come up with
and
one,
it's always like, oh, it's going to be cheaper than buying all the pieces individually or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'll say there's one time I bought a season pass after I beat Bioshock Infinite. I bought the season pass for the DLC coming after it, and I haven't touched that freaking DLC. And I would not, like, I wish I hadn't, because it's not that I just don't have time to play it, right? And that's, honestly, it's kind of like part of a larger issue I have with kind of how Steam sales run, good old game sales run, Humble Bundle sales run, where they've gotten people to buy a lot of stuff where, like, on its own, it's not that much money, but you add it up and it's like, holy crap, I spent a couple $100 on games I probably will never play, right? And I think a lot of people out there, like myself included, have fairly large Steam libraries because you've been convinced to buy something that, like, you got to get it now or whatever.
Right.
Because now is the deal. Now's the deal, and you want to be smart, right? And you want to
get a deal.
Wish you had, and you got to get a deal, and it feels like that. It feels that hunting aspect, right? That you like, oh man, I picked off the weakest, oxen in this little crowd here. I'm doing a good job as a hunter, right? I'm finding the bargains, which is why JCPenney, their sales tanked when they stopped running sales.
Yeah.
And then they started running sales again, and because they were going, we're just going to show you that true price of things, right?
Instead of the old price with the slash through it.
So people love the feeling that they're getting a deal, and season passes bring about that feeling. You feel like you're getting a deal, but unless you're convinced that that's what you're going to do with your time, just don't do it. Buy something when you're ready to play it or when you need it. And besides, we're at this point now on the tangent of Steam sales where it's obvious about how frequently any given game is going to be 75% off. Again, it's going to come back around again. This isn't the only time.
It's usually
there was a phase where it felt like this is crazy. Whoa, it's getting $5? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And then 3 months later it was $5 again. 3 months later it was $5 again. So that's I really take issue with season passes just because of that point. I don't think anyone should ever buy anything sight unseen. I don't think you ever should do it.
And never put a developer in a spot where they promise you they're going to give you something that they haven't even made yet. It's
Right.
You've pre-ordered the game, and you've pre-ordered a season pass with it, which means, once we release this game we're still working on, then we'll start working on another thing that you can get, and you won't have to pay for it then, you can just download it. It's like...
They have their money, they're not as incentivized.
Exactly. It probably won't be as good. That's just... we've talked about capitalism earlier on. That's how capitalism works. If you get money for something up front, the incentive the burden is now like, I mean, the incentive's just kind of gone. You already have the money. Like what you give them a product, the quality of that product no longer is relevant. It no longer is important.
It's like, oh, what do we have to? Why would we have to?
Yeah.
It's especially if you're looking short term. If you're not thinking long term about your user base or feeling like you're
and a lot of these
companies, more and more of these companies
think short term.
EA,
and they ruin their
Ubisoft,
reputations.
Exactly.
What's interesting, what makes it so tough is, are you into Mass Effect? Do you like sci-fi? Okay, how many games like Mass Effect Andromeda are coming up, right? And what's the likelihood of somebody just who's into that not buying it because of like DLC policies? I don't think it outweighs the number of people that are just going to buy it anyways for EA, for example. You know, and I think that's the sad thing is that they're finding the little ways where they can just ride closer to this line of what's acceptable.
Talking about pre-ordering, though, it's like, like back in the day, if you didn't pre-order, it's a very good chance they weren't going to have enough copies at the store for you to get. And that's going to be true of collector's editions of games coming out, you know, where you get like that freaking crazy Final Fantasy 51 with the statues and stuff. That's a limited run, or the ones with like the steel cases with the Yoshitaka Amano art on it. Those are limited runs. You want to get that stuff for collectors' reasons. Like, you better pre-order it because you're not going to get it any other way. But if you're just looking to get the game, it's the standard version of the game, you could just download that midnight the day it's released. Just buy it, download it. If you're not into digital copies, they're going to have plenty of copies at the store.
Yeah, the shortage just never happened.
You probably have. If you're anywhere near a city, you probably have like 15 GameStops around you and a million other places where you could go get it, Best Buy or whatever. Just walk in a store and buy it. They will not be sold out, guarantee you. Of all of the stores, you'll get it somewhere.
And part of that is because there's just so many games nowadays that it's not like everyone who owned an N64 wanted Ocarina of Time, right? It's like there are large releases, but there's enough other big games going on at the same time. Not everyone's focused on these one or two games a year. It's very rare you have a release like Final Fantasy 15 or something where people are. This was looked forward to for years and years and years, and it was like the event of the year for a lot of people, right? That doesn't happen as much, I feel like. Probably because there's the quality of games across the board has risen so much. I think that there's a lot of great games out there.
And if you know you are worried, even if you are worried that that it might be sold out, put like $5 down at your GameStop or whatever, and just to reserve your spot. But you don't gotta put the whole $60 down.
You never used to have to buy the whole thing. You just pay $10 and then
that was what I did with Ocarina of Time.
Because and this is the reason why. This is the reason why you don't do that. It's because developers are now depending on those pre-order sales to fund development. Yeah. And there are some developers who have come out and said, "Oh, we didn't get the pre-order sales we were expecting. Now we have to delay the game."
That's
right.
Yeah.
So that's fetched up. You shouldn't be depending on getting money before your product's finished.
I know.
That's not how you should model your business.
What's really like weird about that is I follow this subreddit called it's the box office subreddit. It's really fascinating because it's just people talking about the money and the numbers and the viewership behind new releases, right? And they'll follow the trail, and they're always talking about the multipliers that movies are getting and the tail that they have. And a lot of movies nowadays, specifically movies, and I imagine to some degree this is true for video games, make like half of their money on like the opening weekend. And so that opening weekend is huge. That's why when you hear anyone saying, "Oh, this opening weekend is whatever it was," and "Oh, it was bad or good," it's like, "Oh yeah, but they've got more time, right?" It's like, no, the overwhelming majority of the money they make is on the release week.
Yeah.
And then yes, they will keep making money, and then there will be DVD sales down the line. But very few movies, like a great example of a movie that actually had long legs and defied that was Guardians of the Galaxy. That movie didn't really have a spectacular opening weekend, but it had long legs, abnormally long legs for what that type of
we saw the movie like a month and a half.
Yeah, and it was like still in theaters.
Yeah.
It was all right.
It was good. It was good.
I don't know why it had the appeal it had. So I imagine on the video game end, the more business-minded, people behind these companies are like, we got to have that gangbusters freaking crazy first week. Mm-hmm. I don't know how video game sales slope off. You know what I mean? Because like at the theater, it's like, oh, this is only going to be in the theater for so long. So there's a time-sensitive thing.
But the game is out for years.
Yeah, oh crap! Like if you didn't see Batman vs Superman in theaters, you can't see it in theaters now. You just can't. But if there was a game that released on that date, you can still buy it and have the same experience.
I know that the used sales market really cuts into the legs of video games because
it cycles back in.
These stores incentivize you to trade it in. It's like we'll give you $45
or
for a trade in on a brand new game that came out last week, let's say. So you get most of your money back for it, and then they turn around and sell it for like a couple bucks less than full price. And so people are like, yeah, I beat this game and I don't need it anymore. I'll go get $45 of credit to buy something new.
Mm-hmm. And that's why Microsoft tried to curb that with their Xbox One. And obviously there was a big amount of backlash to that. I'm sure that it was the publishers that were, or they're the publisher, it was the the third-party developers that were pushing Microsoft, like, hey, if you do this, then we'd make more money. I'm like, okay, we'll do that for you guys. And obviously that just is not a good idea. That's not the way to do it. But that is, at least to some extent, that was addressing this problem.
Right.
But the consumers are never going to be okay with shouldering that burden. That will always be on the publisher.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
unfortunately.
I can see the pressures. What's also crazy is if you're any of these companies and you're paying any attention to what's going on in the mobile space, microtransactions are making the lion's share of the money in mobile video games right now. Like, it's not even close.
Yeah.
And the other appeal to microtransactions is it doesn't mean you just got that lump sum on your launch week. You have people that are maybe going to be buying... to play the game 2 weeks in and maybe they're buying something else and that's kicking a little spike there.
People like with World of Warcraft, some people are going to continue putting money into this mobile game for years.
Right.
And years and years. And they will continue.
Like Pokemon Go finally dropped out of the number one spot.
Yeah, I think it went back up though.
Oh, was it back to number one? But it was for the first time since its launch, it was briefly not number one anymore. And then the number one was what had been number two the entire time, which is that Clash of Clans. Anyways, it's like it's not the original Clash of Clans game, but it's the newer one that they've released. And that's that game came out so long ago. Yeah, and it's still competitive with Pokemon Go at this point. They're raking in the cash right now. They're making a ton of money consistently. Like it's coming through the doors every day. Every business wants that steady cash flow, right? Yeah. So that's another incentive. They feel like they're hedging their bets, I guess, and they're seeing other people getting away with it. And we might be in a bubble for that kind of thing. It might be that people are tolerant of it now, and maybe a few more years down the road, they're going to be over it.
I think then that's totally possible.
I don't know.
But I don't think so because, and my biggest problem with microtransactions is that they typically take advantage of the consumers who are maybe prone to gambling addictions or to things like that.
The whales.
Yeah.
And those are the people who aren't as good at the game. And then it gives them a boost.
There you
go. Like Candy Crush is a great example of this, where I can't get past this level, and that addictive mindset. Like I've got to pass the level, but if I buy the things that make it easier for me to win, then I can get to the next one, and pretty soon you find yourself spending $20, $30.
But the next one's harder than the one you just were on, so you're gonna have to spend money on that one too.
So it's like a pay to win thing, and that's my biggest problem with microtransactions. Is when they give you tools to give you an advantage over the other players. And you can pay to
because then whoever has more money.
In multiplayer games,
once again, that's capitalism.
So,
but that's whoever has more money gets to win the game, and that's
a great example of I think well-used DLC / microtransaction kind of is in Splatoon. You can buy the amiibo, which at the very least you feel like you got a physical thing for that, right?
Some people just collect amiibo and don't even have a Wii U.
Yeah. And then you can scan it in, and if you complete all the single-player challenge stuff, there's a lot of it, you can unlock a skin for a weapon that already exists in the game. Or you can unlock some equipment that doesn't exist in the game, but honestly, there are other ways to get that kind of stuff. So like the samurai outfit in Splatoon, you can only get through the amiibo.
That's right.
But it's actually not really that great. It's like okay equipment. It's not bad, but the way Splatoon's game mechanics work, any piece of equipment could be awesome. You know what I mean? If you put the work into it. So it didn't give anyone an edge. It just gave people a cosmetic tweak to a multiplayer game. So no, the people that are wearing the samurai armor, I actually kind of think it's kind of funny. It's like you see them and it's like, okay, cool. It's like some 12-year-old kid or something who's stoked about samurai armor, but not like, oh crap, the dude who paid money is here and he's gonna screw us over.
He's gonna beat everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's not. Splatoon does a pretty good job of balancing because there's so much stuff.
Oh yeah.
That it's like, okay, maybe the samurai helmet has like the power up fist, but there's other hat things you can wear that have that same power.
There's a lot of them.
It's even though it has an effect, it's still mostly cosmetic.
Yeah.
And yeah, some Nintendo I think is doing fine. They're easing into the microtransactions. They don't want to, cause anybody to think that they're just after your money or anything. They're doing fine. A lot of these other mobile companies don't give a fetch. They're just like, oh yeah, you're addicted to gambling. 1%, the lower bottom, less than 1% of the people who are paying for 90% of their profits, they're content to just keep exploiting those people forever.
Well, and especially a lot of the online games that use a gacha or a roulette system. So
basically,
a lot of the Japanese mobile games that are
gachas,
gachas, it's a gacha, and you don't know what you're gonna get, which means that it incentivizes you're playing a slot machine.
I'm pretty sure that Overwatch works the same way.
Does all
those boxes you get,
packages you get, yeah. People have been comparing that to gambling, and
it's like buying a pack of Pokemon cards or
you might get something good. You might not.
You had no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But touching on pre-ordering again, a lot of people get upset when somebody comes out and says don't pre-order,
right? Because they're excited and they
as if we have the pretense to tell someone how they should spend their money. Right. And so let's clarify that that's not the case. We're not telling you what to do.
When people ask us questions on these podcasts, we'll answer the question, but it doesn't mean we're telling you what to do.
But here's the reason why I encourage people not to pre-order unless they're going after a huge collector's edition thing where it's okay, you're not going to get that any other way. But for the standard version of Final Fantasy 15, let's say, actually I should probably look this up. The King's Tale game is a pre-order exclusive through GameStop, right?
I think that was what it said. Yeah, we were looking.
And it's because it's physical. It's with the game.
There is no reason why that game should be capped behind that wall, and that's the kind of behavior that I like. That's the sort of thing where they're withholding something from you and saying you can't have this thing unless and is that part of the the premiere which version of the game?
Golden Deluxe?
It's an EB Games GameStop exclusive pre-order bonus. So in order to grab, you have to place your pre-order with EB Games or GameStop.
But just for the standard version.
I think the regular version of Final Fantasy 15.
It's not even like a deluxe version or anything like that.
Yeah, they're saying best of all, it's free, and that's why they call it a bonus. So.
It's free if you pre-order the game.
That's the kind of behavior that I do not want to reward. I don't like GameStop. Many people don't like them. They don't like their business practices. They don't want to support them as a company in any way because of how they basically screw you over for a lot of trade-ins. They have a lot of things going on that people don't want to support. So I don't want to buy the game from GameStop. But I can't have this other thing that I want to try because of it. And so what they're doing is they're trying to pull people over. They have a deal with Square Enix. GameStop and Square Enix made a deal. It's like, we're going to get people to spend money here by withholding this thing that people want. And that's the kind of thing that you can't reward by being like, I really want that though, so I guess I got to pre-order.
I'm so confused by how those types of deals work anyways, because it's there's one with Walmart, one with Target, one, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's all these
different ones.
There's ones with Japan retailers specifically, Rakuten, and I can't remember who else. Does Square Enix create all this stuff and then go, okay, all you guys, and
who
then
wants it?
Here's which one do you really want? Which one do you want to be your exclusive? I don't understand.
What if
they
you
choose
want
team
all
captains
of it?
and then they pick?
What if you want all of it? you can't have all of it. And that's the kind of behavior that I just feel like we shouldn't reward. Like, you should offer your products to people to get them in whatever convenient way is to them. If I want to get the game digital, I should be able to do that. If I want to get the game physical copy from your own Square Enix store, why can't I do it that way? You know what I mean? I don't know. I really don't like this kind of practice for pre-orders, and that's the reason why people say don't pre-order games. It's not because they don't want you to spend your money pre-ordering games, because they don't want these companies continuing to do this.
Dude, can you imagine if theater chains did this? If AMC was like, "Hey, if you see Avengers at our place, there's this sick scene where
there's an
tank
extra
gets
scene
chucked by the Hulk and it blows up this freaking jet," and
or
but
like
only at
an
our
end of
theater
credits,
chain. So if you
kind
go
of thing.
see it,
What if they had done that with more Joker scenes in Suicide Squad? If you see it at Cinemark, you're gonna get 5 extra Joker scenes.
Where did you see the movie at? Oh man, you should have seen it at Cinemark.
Oh, dude.
Joker was all over that movie.
Do you see how fetched that is?
I got a free
Do
little
you
app.
see how fetched that is? That's exactly what this is.
It is. You
that's-
get a different experience depending on where you bought the game. That shouldn't be correct.
We don't want that to be a thing anymore. That's why we say don't pre-order. That's the reason.
Well,
Any other
I guess we're done.
thoughts on DLC?
Just gotta say that, like, pre-ordering, I mean, it is a thing, and it's not a bad thing. It's just the way it's being taken advantage of.
Like, I get it. I feel
there
that
you
pull
go.
when there's a game I really want. I feel it.
Yeah,
Like,
me
dude,
too.
Yeah, I freaking want to pre-order it.
And
And they
sometimes
market it
I
to you.
might
They'll hit you
actually
with
do
ads,
it.
and they'll be like, "You gotta, hey, pre-order." And they do the P.T. Barnum thing. Once you've seen the ad like 7 times, now you're convinced or whatever. I get it.
It's just that they're taking advantage of it to an extent that I'm not comfortable with. And that's where it's like, okay, yeah, this can stop, and I'd be happy. So, guys, thank you for watching our podcast. Hopefully some interesting game developments happen next week. We can actually talk about some industry, like current events.
Please, just...
Okay. Now, some
announce
people were
it.
saying Nintendo NX would be out in September, right?
Okay.
Some people, as we approached September, then some people started saying, "Oh, maybe it's not until October." But no one said November yet, right? So we're definitely October, right? Is this like for sure October?
The announcement better be this week or next week. Otherwise, I think you've just like you're getting people mad at you now.
I know. It's crazy.
And I don't see what the incentive is to continue withholding it. It's launching in the next, 6 months?
Well, March, 6 months.
It's 6 months away.
But we're almost in October now.
People
so
gotta
like
be
5.
informed. People gotta be informed about what this thing is and whether they're gonna buy it, man.
Well, especially as we come into, like, you got the PS4 Pro, you've got the Xbox S, and these other things come out. And it's like, okay, I could buy one of these. Or I could wait a few more months and buy the NX, and this is the Christmas season. This is when people are buying these things. And you just tell me what it is, and then maybe I won't buy one of those, and I'll just buy the NX. But if I don't even know what it is, I think a lot of people are going to go ahead and like, I don't even know what it is, so I'll pull the trigger on the PS4 Pro because I don't even know what the NX is.
So the PlayStation VR is releasing in October.
I believe so.
Like the middle of October somewhere, right? But after that, I can't imagine there being another large video game announcement for like the rest of the year. Who's going to announce something like?
No one announces things in November or December.
Nintendo
That's
and
when
the
you sell
PlayStation VR.
things.
So I mean, like Nintendo at this point, had they announced in September, it would have been sharing headlines with PlayStation 4 Pro or whatever.
True.
At this point, it's going to not be sharing headlines with anything.
No. In fact, past 2 weeks, we have not heard much about the gaming industry. So it's quiet. They've got as much time.
Which is why they should have done it like end of last week. Because it's like you're in this perfect spot where no one's talking about anything else but you.
Totally.
My understanding is that was Silver Week in Japan, and a lot of companies are off, and it just.
But this podcast, we're recording it right now. It's Tuesday. For us, as we're recording this, tomorrow is Wednesday. If the NX got announced just before this podcast went up, or at the same time tomorrow, just know we recorded it the day before. We're upset, and if it came out already by the time you're hearing this, cool. We're cool. That's awesome.
Well, dudes, we got
That's
some
what we
really good.
want.
We got some really good topics of discussion this week, though. Like,
Yeah.
thanks for all the stuff you guys suggested. That
Yeah,
was
keep
great.
submitting topics.
Send us more stuff. We're just as happy talking about this as what news goes on. So that's cool.
True.
Check
But
us
we
out
like
on
a mix.
YouTube if
We
you're
like
if you're just
50-50.
listening to us through iTunes or something. We're on YouTube. Look up Dark Pixel Gaming. That's where the podcast is, and we do
That's
videos on Dark Pixel.
Yeah. There.
Podcast.
Oh, one other thing. A lot of people have been saying, like, hey, is there a list of games you guys have so that I don't buy something you already have?
Ooh,
Look for a
interesting.
video tomorrow, which is Thursday for you guys. I'm going to do a video just showing you what we got.
It's gonna be a list. It's gonna go by like in 5 seconds.
Maybe in the description we should have like a.
Well, in the description,
text
I'll
listed
have a
out.
Google document where
Okay, good.
all of it will be listed. Every game that we own will be listed there.
Okay, cool.
But
Good.
I'll do a
That's
video that kind of like shows them too. I'll put all my games out here and they'll show you what we got. Because I've been kind of wanting to do that because I went home and I got all my old consoles and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll show you like what I got.
Don't send us NBA Courtside 2. We got it.
We
got
have
it already.
NBA courtside
We
too.
got it.
And the first
Dude, I
one.
took some photos of when I was playing that. Anyways.
Oh, great.
Okay, we got to go now. See you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
See you
Peace.
guys.